Xenobiology sighed, his tentacles drooping dramatically as he slumped into his anti-gravity chair. Remind me again why we thought taking Xenobiology 101 was a good idea, he gurgled to his study group. Bleep, bloop. The robotic exchange student whirred sympathetically. Because we're masochists who enjoy torturing ourselves with impossible assignments. A series of rapid beeps followed, which the others recognized as bleep bloop's laughter. Oh, come on, guys, chirped Flutterby, her gossamer wings fluttering with excitement. It's not that bad. We just have to choose a Class 12 Deathworld and write a comprehensive report on its dominant species. How hard can it be? The rest of the alien students stared at her in disbelief, their various appendages and sensory organs conveying a universal message of "Are you kidding me?" Gurgle Snort, the gelatinous blob of the group, bubbled sarcastically, "Oh sure, a piece of cake. Let's just pop over to a planet that could kill us in 1,000 different ways before we even land. Sounds like a lovely field trip." Well, when you put it that way, Flutterby's antennae drooped slightly. Xenobiology's eye stalks perked up suddenly. Wait a minute. I've got an idea. What about that backwater planet in the Sol system? You know, the one with the bipedal apes that somehow haven't managed to blow themselves up yet? Earth, Bleep Bloop's processors whirred as he accessed his databanks. Classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. Extremely diverse ecosystem. Highly adaptable dominant species. Known for their inexplicable ability to survive against all odds. Gurgle Snort oozed skeptically. Sounds perfect, too perfect. What's the catch? Well, Bleep Bloop continued, the catch is that no alien species has ever successfully completed a full study of Earth without complications. Complications? Flutterby's wings fluttered nervously. What kind of complications? Xenobiology waved a tentacle dismissively. Oh, you know the usual. Crashed ships, lost probes, accidental alien autopsies. Nothing we can't handle. Nothing we can't handle? Gurgle Snort bubbled incredulously. Have you lost your neural clusters? We're talking about a planet where the dominant species uses explosions as entertainment. Exactly, Xenobiology exclaimed, his eye stalks gleaming with excitement. Think about it. If we can pull this off, we'll be legends. The first students in the history of the Galactic University to successfully study Earth up close and personal. There was a moment of silence as the group contemplated this. Then, slowly, tentacles, appendages, and gelatinous pseudopods raised in agreement. Fine, Gurgle Snort burbled resignedly. But if I end up as some human's gelatin dessert, I'm blaming you. And so, with a mixture of excitement, trepidation, and more than a little insanity, the alien study group began their preparations for their field trip to Earth. 2 Earth weeks later, the group found themselves hovering in orbit, staring down at the blue and green marble that was their subject of study. Beautiful, Flutterby whispered, her compound eyes reflecting the swirling clouds and vast oceans. It's terrifying, Gurgle Snort countered, his gelatinous form quivering slightly. Look at all that water. Do you know what water does to my kind? It's not pretty, let me tell you. Xenobiology, who had appointed himself the de facto leader of this suicide mission, a fact the others were more than happy to remind him of at every opportunity, waved his tentacles authoritatively. All right, team, let's review the plan. We'll land in a remote area, observe the humans from a safe distance, collect our data, and be back in time for the Galactic Bachelor finale. Any questions? Bleep Bloop raised a metallic appendage. Yes, what's our contingency plan for when, not if, but when this all goes horribly wrong? Improvise, Xenobiology replied with what he hoped was a confident gurgle. We're doomed, Gurgle Snort bubbled morosely. Despite the blob's pessimism, the alien study group managed to land their cloaked ship in a dense forest without incident. As they emerged, each wearing their species-appropriate environmental suits, they were immediately struck by the intensity of Earth's gravity. By the great void, Xenobiology gasped, his tentacles straining against the pull. How do humans move in this? Flutterby, whose delicate wings were practically useless in the heavy atmosphere, nodded in agreement. It's like flying through pudding, really heavy pudding. Bleep Bloop, being the only one not affected by the gravity, beeped smugly. Advantages of a metal exoskeleton, organic friends. Show off. Gurgle Snort burbled, his gelatinous form flattened against the ground like a very unhappy pancake. As they struggled to adjust to Earth's conditions, a rustling in the nearby bushes caught their attention. The aliens froze, their various sensory organs straining to identify the potential threat. Please don't be a human. Please don't be a human. Flutterby chanted under her breath. The bushes parted, and out stepped a deer. The majestic creature stared at the aliens for a long moment, its ears twitching curiously. Oh, thank the stars, Xenobiology sighed in relief. It's just a local fauna. Harmless herbivore, if I remember correctly. As if on cue, the deer suddenly reared up on its hind legs, bared a set of razor-sharp fangs, and let out a bone-chilling roar. What in the name of the Galactic Council is that? Gurgle Snort shrieked, his gelatinous form vibrating in terror. Bleep Bloop's processors whirred frantically. Error, Earth database corrupted. Herbivores not supposed to have fangs. Does not compute. The alien study group did the only sensible thing they could in this situation. They ran. Or rather, they attempted to run. Xenobiology's tentacles flailed wildly as he tried to gain traction on the unfamiliar terrain. Flutterby's wings buzzed uselessly against the heavy atmosphere. Gurgle Snort left a slimy trail as he oozed up speed, which, unfortunately, wasn't very fast at all. Only Bleep Bloop managed a decent pace, his metal legs clanking loudly as he sprinted ahead. The monstrous deer thing gave chase, its antlers gleaming menacingly in the sunlight. Just as it was about to overtake them, a loud bang echoed through the forest, and the creature collapsed mid-stride. The alien skidded to a halt, or in Gurgle Snort's case, slowly ceased oozing, and turned to see a human standing there, holding what they recognized from their research as a gun. Well, I'll be damned, the human drawled, tipping his hat back. When my buddy Cletus said he saw a chupacabra out here, I thought he'd been hit in the moonshine again. But this takes the cake. The alien study group stared at the human in a mixture of awe and terror. Here in the flesh was the dominant species of this Deathworld. The creature that had not only survived, but thrived in an environment that seemed designed to kill everything on it. The human squinted at them, scratching his head. Now, I ain't one to jump to conclusions, but y'all don't look like you're from round here. Unless the circus is in town and I didn't get the memo. Xenobiology, realizing that their cover was well and truly blown, decided to take a diplomatic approach. He extended a tentacle in what he hoped was a non-threatening manner. Greetings, Earth Dweller. We come in peace for the purpose of academic research. The human blinked slowly, then burst out laughing. Well, slap my ass and call me Sally. Alien researchers. Wait till I tell the boys at the bar about this, they'll never believe it. As the human continued to chuckle, the aliens exchanged confused glances. This was not how first contact scenarios were supposed to go according to their textbooks. Flutterby, ever the optimist, fluttered her wings hopefully. So you're not going to dissect us or turn us over to your government? The human wiped a tear from his eye, still grinning. Dissect you? Heck no. That'd be downright rude. As for the government, well, let's just say we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. Your secret's safe with me, little lady or fella, or whatever you are. Gurgle Snort, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally found his voice. Excuse me, Earth Dweller, but could you perhaps explain what that creature was? Our database seems to be incomplete. The human glanced at the fallen deer monster. Oh, that's just a jackalope. Nasty critters, but they make for good eating. Speaking of which, why all hungry? I was just about to head back to my cabin for some dinner. The aliens stared at each other in disbelief. They had just been chased by a mythical creature, saved by a human with a weapon that harnessed explosions, and now they were being invited to dinner. Earth was turning out to be even stranger than they had imagined. Xenobiology, sensing an opportunity for their research, nodded his eye stalks. We would be honored to accept your invitation, Earth Dweller. Call me Bob, the human said, hefting the jackalope onto his shoulders with ease. Come on then, it's not far and I promise I won't serve you anything too weird. Can't guarantee it won't try to eat you back, though. He laughed heartily at his own joke as he led the way through the forest. As they followed Bob to his cabin, the alien study group couldn't help but feel they had stumbled into something far beyond their academic preparations. Little did they know their adventure on Earth was just beginning. Bob's cabin turned out to be a rustic wooden structure that looked like it had seen better days, about a century ago. As they approached, the aliens noticed various contraptions and gadgets scattered around the property, some of which seemed to defy the laws of physics as they knew them. Home sweet home, Bob announced, kicking open the door with a boot. It ain't much, but it keeps the rain out, most of the time. The interior of the cabin was a chaotic mix of advanced technology and what appeared to be medieval torture devices. Bleep Bloop's sensors went into overdrive trying to categorize everything. Fascinating, the robot beeped. Is that a flux capacitor next to a butter churn? Bob grinned, tossing the jackalope onto a table that was definitely not up to any health code standards. Good eye, Tin Man. Built that myself. Still working out the kinks. but I'm pretty sure I almost traveled through time last Tuesday. Or was it next Tuesday? Time travel's a bit fuzzy, you know. Xenolopes' tentacles curled in confusion. But Earth isn't supposed to have time travel technology yet. Your species hasn't even cracked faster than light travel. Bob shrugged, pulling out a wickedly sharp knife. Who needs to go faster than light when you can just skip through time? Now, who's hungry for some jackalope stew? Gurgle Snort burbled nervously. I don't think our digestive systems are compatible with Earth cuisine. Nonsense, Bob exclaimed, already hacking away at the jackalope. My stool put hair on your chest, or tentacles, or whatever it is you folks have. As Bob prepared the meal, regaling them with tales of his various adventures and inventions, the aliens found themselves both terrified and oddly fascinated. This human living alone in the wilderness of a death world seemed to embody everything that made his species so paradoxically fragile and indestructible. Flutterby, ever curious, fluttered over to examine a shelf filled with jars of mysterious substances. What are these? She asked, pointing to a jar filled with what looked like writhing shadows. Oh, that? Bob said casually, stirring his bubbling pot of stew. That's just some darkness I bottled up from the far side of the moon. Comes in handy during those long summer days when you just want a bit of shade, you know. The aliens exchanged looks of utter disbelief. Bottled darkness. From the moon. It was becoming increasingly clear that their textbooks had severely underestimated the capabilities and insanity of humans. As they sat down to dinner, the aliens politely declining the stew in favor of their own ration packs, Bob regaled them with stories that seemed to defy all logic and reason. And that's how I wrestled the Loch Ness Monster and ended up with this nifty belt, he concluded, patting his waist where, indeed, a belt made of what looked suspiciously like dinosaur hide rested. Xenolope, who had been furiously taking notes, paused. But the Loch Ness Monster is a myth, and even if it weren't, it's supposedly aquatic. How did you get a belt from it? Bob winked. That's the beauty of it, tentacle fella. On Earth, myths have a funny way of being more real than reality sometimes. As the night wore on and Bob's tales grew ever more outlandish, the aliens found themselves reevaluating everything they thought they knew about Earth and its inhabitants. This planet wasn't just a death world. It was a world where the impossible was merely Tuesday, where physics took a backseat to sheer human stubbornness, and where danger lurked behind every tree, usually wearing antlers and sporting fangs it had no business having. Just as they thought they were starting to get a handle on things, a loud crash from outside sent them all scrambling for cover. What was that? Flutterby squeaked, their wings vibrating in fear. Bob cocked his head, listening intently. Sounds like the Sasquatches are having their annual square dance a bit early this year. Must be a leap year in their calendar. Before the aliens could process this new bit of insanity, the cabin door burst open, revealing a massive hairy creature wearing, was that a tutu? Bob, the Sasquatch bellowed, we need a fourth for our dance quartet. You in? The human grinned, already reaching for a pair of tap shoes that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. You bet your Bigfoot I am. Hey alien folks, want to join? It's not every day you get to dousey-do with a cryptid. And so, in a turn of events that would have made even the most imaginative science fiction writer pause and reconsider their career choices, the alien study group found themselves being taught the intricacies of square dancing by a human and 3 Sasquatches in Tutus. Xenolope, his tentacles tangled in a complicated doosey-doo, couldn't help but laugh. You know, he gurgled to his friends, I think I'm beginning to understand why Earth is called a death world. Bleep Bloop, whose metallic frame was surprisingly graceful as he twirled a Sasquatch, beeped in agreement. Indeed, it's not just the physical dangers, it's the sheer mind-bending insanity of it all. Gurgle Snort, who had taken the form of a gelatinous disco ball for the occasion, bubbled philosophically. Perhaps that's the true lesson here. Survival on a death world isn't just about physical adaptations. It's about embracing the chaos, dancing with the danger, and somehow coming out on top, usually with a good story to tell. Flutterby, her wings finally useful as she fluttered above the dance floor, chirped in agreement. You know, I think I'm starting to see the appeal of this planet. It's terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. As the night wore on and the square dance devolved into what Bob called a good old-fashioned hootenanny, the alien study group found themselves swept up in the bizarre joy of it all. They laughed, they danced, they dodged the occasional stray Sasquatch foot, and for a moment they forgot they were on the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. It wasn't until the first light of dawn began to peek through the trees that they realized they had spent the entire night partying with cryptids. As the Sasquatches lumbered off into the forest, tutu sequins glinting in the early morning light, the aliens collapsed in exhaustion. Well, folks, Bob said, looking far too chipper for someone who had just danced for 8 hours straight. How about some breakfast? I make a mean Bigfoot berry pancake. Xylorp, his tentacles drooping with fatigue, managed to raise an eye stalk. Bob, my friend, I have a question. Is every day on Earth like this? Bob scratched his chin thoughtfully. Like this? Nah, not every day. The alien sighed in relief, only to tense up again as Bob continued, some days are way weirder. This was pretty tame, all things considered. As if on cue, a tremendous roar shook the trees, sending birds scattering into the sky. The aliens huddled together in fear, while Bob just sighed and reached for what looked suspiciously like a ray gun. Dagnabbit, he muttered, sounds like old Nessie's cousin from the lake up yonder is acting up again. You folks might want to stick close. Things might get a bit splashy. And so, with barely a moment to catch their breath, the alien study group found themselves trudging through the forest behind Bob, who was whistling a jaunty tune, as if he wasn't about to confront a legendary lake monster. As they approached the lake, Gurgle Snort oozed nervously. Should we perhaps reconsider this course of action? Our research doesn't technically require us to engage in combat with mythical creatures. Bob laughed, patting the gelatinous alien with a reassuring hand, which sank slightly into Gurgle Snort's form, much to the blob's discomfort. Combat? Nah, we ain't gonna fight old Tessie, we're just gonna have a little chat, maybe play some chess. She gets cranky when she's bored, is all. The aliens exchanged bewildered looks. Chess? With a lake monster? Surely they thought this was where they'd finally discover the limit to Earth's insanity. Surely this was the point where Bob would reveal it was all an elaborate joke. But as they crested the hill overlooking the lake, they saw a sight that made them question everything they thought they knew about, well, everything. There, in the middle of the lake, was a head the size of a small house, attached to a neck that seemed to go on forever. And balanced precariously on that head was a giant chessboard. Tessie, Bob called out, waving his arms, you up for a rematch? I brought some new friends who might give you a challenge. The enormous creature turned its gaze upon them, and the aliens felt the weight of millions of years of evolution in those ancient eyes. Then, to their utter astonishment, it spoke. Bob, rumbled a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself, you know I prefer Scrabble on Tuesdays. And that was the moment when the alien study group collectively decided that their Xenobiology 101 textbooks were, in fact, completely and utterly useless when it came to Earth. As Bob engaged in a friendly debate with Tessie about the merits of various board games, the aliens huddled together for an impromptu meeting. Okay, Xylorp whispered, his tentacles twitching nervously, I think it's safe to say we may be in over our heads here. Bleep Bloop's processors whirred in agreement. Affirmative. My databanks have officially run out of logical explanations for, well, everything we've encountered in the past 24 hours. Flutterby, however, was practically vibrating with excitement. But don't you see? This is amazing. We're witnessing things no other alien researchers have ever seen. Think of the paper we could write. Gurgle Snort burbled sarcastically. Yes, because the Galactic University is totally going to believe we played chess with a lake monster and square danced with Sasquatches. We'll be laughed out of academia. As they argued amongst themselves, they failed to notice Bob approaching with a mischievous grin on his face. Hey, alien folks. Good news. Tessie's agreed to a game of Trivial Pursuit. Intergalactic Edition. You're up. And so, as the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, the alien study group found themselves perched atop the head of a prehistoric lake monster, rolling oversized dice and answering trivia questions about galaxies they'd never even heard of. Somewhere between Xylorp correctly guessing the mating call of the Bizorbians of Epsilon 5, it sounded suspiciously like Earth's disco music, and Gurgle Snort shapeshifting into a gelatinous buzzer for wrong answers, the aliens had an epiphany. Earth wasn't just a death world because of its harsh conditions or dangerous fauna. It was a death world because it constantly challenged one's perception of reality. It was a planet where the laws of physics were more like guidelines, where myth and science coexisted in a chaotic dance, and where the greatest danger wasn't the monsters or the environment, but the risk of losing one's mind trying to make sense of it all. As the game wound down, with Tessie emerging victorious, much to Bob's chagrin, the alien study group realized they had learned more about Earth and its dominant species in one crazy day than they could have in years of conventional research. They had discovered that humans like Bob didn't just survive on this death world, they thrived on its chaos, embraced its impossibilities, and somehow managed to befriend creatures that, by all rights, should have eaten them for breakfast. As they made their way back to Bob's cabin, exhausted but exhilarated, Xixilorp turned to his friends. "I think," he said slowly, "that we may need to rethink our entire approach to this assignment." Flutterby nodded enthusiastically. "Oh yes, instead of a standard research paper, how about an interpretive dance? Or maybe a series of abstract paintings?" Bleep, bloop beeped in agreement. "Perhaps a quantum-encoded holographic presentation that only makes sense when viewed dimension to dimension." Gurgle Snort, despite his best efforts to maintain his pessimism, found himself caught up in the excitement. "You know what? Why not? If Earth has taught us anything, it's that the impossible is just another Tuesday around here." As they reached the cabin, Bob turned to them with a twinkle in his eye. "So, alien folks, what's next on your research agenda? We could go chupacabra hunting, or maybe take a quick trip to the center of the Earth. I know a shortcut." The aliens looked at each other, a mix of terror and anticipation on their faces, well, in the faces of those who had faces. They had come to Earth expecting to study a Deathworld. Instead, they had found a planet that defied categorization, a species that laughed in the face of danger, and a reality that seemed to reinvent itself with each passing moment. Xixilorp, speaking for the group, extended a tentacle to shake Bob's hand. "My friend," he said with a gurgle that somehow managed to convey both resignation and excitement, "we are in your hands. Show us more of your impossible world." Bob's grin widened. "Well, alrighty then. Let me just grab my interdimensional pocket watch, my quantum flux hiking boots, and a couple of sandwiches. Something tells me we're in for one heck of an adventure." As Bob disappeared into his cabin, the alien study group shared a look that said more than words ever could. They had come to Earth to study a Deathworld, but they were beginning to suspect that the real danger wasn't in the planet's harsh conditions or fearsome creatures. No, the real danger of Earth lay in its ability to make you question everything you thought you knew, to show you wonders beyond imagination, and to make you fall in love with its beautiful insanity. It was a planet that could kill you in 1,000 ways, yes, but it could also make you feel more alive than you ever thought possible. And as they stood there, on the porch of a ramshackle cabin in the middle of a forest that probably contained at least 3 impossible things before breakfast, the alien study group came to a profound realization. Earth wasn't just a Deathworld. It was the universe's greatest adventure, and they were just beginning to scratch the surface. Little did they know, as Bob emerged from the cabin with a backpack that seemed to contain far more than should be physically possible, that their real education was only just beginning. For on Earth, every day was a new lesson in the art of surviving, thriving, and occasionally square dancing in the face of cosmic absurdity. And honestly, they wouldn't have it any other way.